أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يهدي فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد رسول الله أما بعد. So I wanted to start today's khutbah with a story narrated by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ about people before his time, and that there's these three men on a journey, right? And during their journey, they hard climate arrived them, right, where it was raining very heavily. So in order to seek, they sought refuge in a cave. And once they were in the cave, because of the harsh climate, a boulder fell in the mouth of the cave. And when the boulder fell in the mouth of the cave, the three men were stuck. And then the men tried to muscle out the boulder using their strength, and they were unable to do so. Then they tried using their intellect, right, to think of a way to come out. But after a point, they realized that there was no way out, and that these men were stuck. And in a moment of desperation, they decided to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they decided to remember a time, right, that they were sincere, and use that time in order to ask Allah for help, right? And that, is a very beautiful response to calamity, right? A lot of times when we hit calamity, we become depressed. Or, we keep thinking, keep trying to do, with our own power instead of turning to Allah, right? And so these three men, right, decide to think of a moment where they were sincere. And the first man, retells his tale. And he says, "Oh Allah, I am a shepherd," right? And one of the benefits that I get from being a shepherd is that I get milk from my cattle, right? And then I use this milk to feed my family. And that, Ya Allah, you know that before I even feed my family or I feed myself, I make sure to go to my parents' place, and I make sure that they are fed, right? That they are not hungry. And Ya Allah, that you know that there was this one time that I went to my parents' place and it was late, and because it was late, my parents were asleep, right? And I did not wish to wake my parents because they seemed tired, right? And that I stayed there the entire night, just in case that my parents would wake up, right? And they would be hungry, and they would be wondering, where is the milk today? Where is my son? And Ya Allah, if I did this for your sake and your sake only, Ya Allah, move the boulder just a little bit so we can see the sky. And when he asked his dua, the boulder moved just slightly a little bit. So then the second man told his story, right? And the second man says, Ya Allah, I was in love with this woman, right? And I was infatuated with this woman. And there were many opportunities where I could have performed in extramarital affairs, right? But because, I feared for you, I didn't. But there was this one time, Ya Allah, that we met at this one point with the intention of performing extramarital affairs. And in that moment, the female told me, to fear Allah. And when she said that, I became conscious of you, Allah, right? And in that moment, right, I decided to, refrain and decided to suppress my urges. If Allah, I stop for you and you only, Ya Allah, move the boulder just a little bit. And in that moment, the boulder moved a little bit. And then the third man told his story. And he said, Ya Allah, I was having a transaction with an individual where he would perform goods, right? And I would give him grains for the goods that he did. And after the transaction, for some reason, I was unable to give him the grains. And so the grains that I was going to give him, I decided to invest that grain. And I invested it again and again until I was able to buy a bunch of cattle and land and crop. And so when the man came back to me asking, where is my payment, right? I could have just gave him the grains that I promised him, right? But because I used the grains that I promised him and I yielded so much more, I gave everything that I got from that investment. Ya Allah, if I gave him what was right for him, for you and you only, Ya Allah, move the boulder just a little bit, and the boulder moved completely, right? And there's a lot of lessons that we can derive from this, right? But the lesson I wanted to focus on today is sincerity, right? And what is sincerity, right? What is ikhlas? Sincerity is doing something for the sake of Allah, right? But the only thing on your mind is La ilaha illallah. The only thing in your mind is to please Allah, right? And this is so much easier said than done. Right? A lot of times we'll start actions with the intent of pleasing Allah. But somewhere along the line, our intention will become skewed, right? We'll go in, I'm going to do this good deed, right, for Allah. But then I see, someone on the side, praising me. And in that moment, a little bit of what I'm doing is to help, to please this individual, or to please the community, or to look good in front of other people, right? And there's a story, I'm not sure how true it is, but there was a boy that was praying one time, right? And he was praying very piously and, very long, and an uncle comes behind him. And he says, "Oh, mashallah, you're praying so well," right? And the boy keeps praying. Right? And then he's like, "Oh look, your ankles are not covered. You follow the sunnah, mashallah." And the boy gets really into the hype of everyone pleasing him. So in that moment, the boy turns around and he's like, "Hey, I'm fasting as well," right? And this is an extreme version of it, but the sense is, sometimes we'll do stuff to please other people, right? And that's why sincerity is a very difficult thing to have. Utmost sincerity is a very hard thing to do, right? And so, actually, I was supposed to give this khutbah last week, right? And unfortunately, I got pulled over, and I wasn't able to make it last week, and someone else gave it, right? And in that moment, you know, when you get pulled over, right, and the cop pulls you, and you're all, you know, you're asking Allah, you become so pious in that moment, right? And you're like, oh Allah, you know, let me go of this one ticket. And then I was remembering the story that I was going to talk about today, right? How we were supposed to remember, how these three men remembered a time that they were pious, you know, that they were extremely sincere, right? And I decided to reflect, do I have a moment personally that I can say with utmost, you know, confidence that, you know, at this moment, I was sincere, right? And Allah, I'm using this to ask, you know, for help. And, you know, I drew a blank. I was unable to think of anything, right? And that made me think that if I was the fourth man in that gathering, if I was the fourth man, right, in the cave, and it was my turn to recount the call, would the boulder move at all? Right? Or would we be stuck there? And, you know, the thing with sincerity, right? A lot of the times we don't have to do like big, you know, grand actions, right? We don't have to donate entire, like, a fortune, right? We don't have to pray all night, right? Well, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, you know, even use half a day to protect yourself from the hellfire, right? And what is half a day? Half a day is like worth, what, 10 cents, 15 cents, right? But the concept of it is that even as an act, right, donating half a day, something that small, right, has the ability to protect you from the hellfire, right? And so that's the thing, that we can never underestimate any of our actions or actions of others, right? Just because someone doesn't come to the masjid, or just because some, you know, they're doing good, but they do a lot of bad on the side, but we don't know what little action they did. Maybe they smiled at someone, you know, or maybe they picked up trash that one time. And in the eyes of Allah, that little action was, you know, enough to protect them from hellfire. And maybe there's just that one individual that does so much, right? He prays all the time, but everything he does isn't sincerely for Allah, right? Everything he does is, you know, just to please like an individual or the community, or just to look good in front of other people. And in the eyes of Allah, you know, he is nothing, right? And so I'm going to end with this first part of the khutbah with this one story, right? Of a man who did nothing good in his life, right? He was not known for having a good relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the day of judgment, he's going to be resurrected, and Allah will ask him, what have you done, right? What have you done in your life? And the man will say, you know, I've done nothing much. But I used to give out loans, interest-free, to individuals, right? And that one day I woke up, and I had this feeling of forgiveness in my heart. And I told the debt collector, today, forgive everyone that owes me money. And Allah will turn to the angels and say, this man forgave the people that owed him, right? But I am the most forgiving, and so I forgive him of all his sins, and the man will enter Jannah. And, you know, inshallah, you know, that's the whole point, where you don't know what action that you do. In the eyes of Allah, that is great. You know, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, you know, make us sincere in our actions. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, to get rid of any doubts that we have in our intentions. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. Another power of sincerity, right, is that it can make the impossible possible. In that moment when the boulder was not movable, right, the men tried everything, right, and the boulder was not moving. But their sincere actions was enough to make the immovable movable, right? That sincerity has the power to make the impossible possible. So all we have to do is be sincere in what we do, and sincere in our deeds, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of the rest. And so then another thing is, how do we know if we are sincere, right? How do we test ourselves whether we're sincere, and how can we become sincere? And the first thing is to know whether you're sincere or not is that when you're in the company of other people versus when you are by yourself, you perform the same amount of good deeds. Right? A lot of the times when we're with individuals, right, we're in the masjid, we'll pray, you know, extra sunnah because everyone else is praying. Or when, you know, someone else gets to pray sunnah, you're like, I don't want to feel bad about not praying sunnah, so I'm going to pray, you know, sunnah just in this moment. But when we are alone, we don't pray sunnah, right? Or in front of others, we'll donate a little bit extra, or we'll do an extra good deed and we'll help someone out. But when we're alone, we don't do the same things, right? And that, in a sense, is a lack of sincerity. Yeah. And another thing that you can do is when someone praises you, right, in a public gathering, you don't accept the praise, right? If someone's like, you made food, right, for example, and someone's like, this was really, really good food. I really like this food. Whoever made this, you know, mashallah. And in that moment, you don't, you know, accept the praise. And you're like, yeah, whoever made it, you know, subhanAllah, it was good. right? And to do that, right, to not take credit for the good that you've done, that's a sign of sincerity. And another problem, right, with today's day and age is we post everything on Facebook and Snapchat, right? Well, when we do something good, or whenever we do anything, it'll be public, and we'll let everyone know, right? A lot of things, when truly sincere actions are things that, no one will know and no one ever will know. That there's just something that just between you and Allah, that they're the only people involved in that action, right? And a lot of us, we'll try to do something good, right? And then eventually, we'll let other people know eventually, and that's not right to do. And I'm going to end with this last story of an individual on the Day of Judgment that is going to be resurrected, and he's going to look to his right, and he's going to see a mountain of good deeds. And he's going to rejoice, and he's going to ask the angels, what is this? And they will say, this is your good deeds, right, that you've done in your entire life. And then afterwards, in a blink of an eye, the deeds will blow away like sawdust in the wind. And the man, will be frightened. He's like, what just happened? I spent my entire life doing good, and now it's all gone. And the angel will say, you never truly, sincerely did the good deeds for Allah, right? And you did it for the people, and now on the Day of Judgment, you have nothing. And so I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us, and to not be one of those individuals that all of our good deeds are, to waste. And like in these last 10 nights, right, we've done so much, right? We pray so much, and all night we're doing stuff that we don't do in the entire year, right? But can we actually say that we were truly 100% sincere? That when we were praying, there was nothing else on our mind other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And that nothing else came into our mind. And that in that moment, it was just us and Allah, and there was no one else, right? And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we, all of these last 10 nights that everything was accepted. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us Jannatul Firdaus. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربي اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. تقيم الصلاة.